Good morning and welcome to Coffee Time with Kauffman, the comfortable place to talk about women's leadership. Today, I am here with Brigitte Bojkowszky. Hey, Bridget.
Hi, Maria. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure being on your show today and having coffee with you.
Thank you. Let me just check in. Did I say your name right?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. We are talking about why personal brands will change your life. Bridget is a global and personal branding strategist who helps clients craft meaningful strategies that effectively elevate their brands to unleash their full potential. She is the founder and owner of BridgetBrands, a branding strategy boutique that offers workshops, one-on-one trainings, and digital courses to empower personal and organizational brands. Together with her clients, she goes deep and helps bring the brilliance out of them to let them shine authentically. Bridget is also host and producer of Brands Talk, a podcast for brand lovers who want to learn from thought leaders, CEOs, business owners, and experts telling their brand stories and sharing valuable firsthand insights. But before I get into that, my name is Maria Kauffman, and I'm an engineer turned life coach. Today, I am drinking a dark roast called Panama Jaguar. I certainly picked this out specifically for Bridget because she is so amazing, and I wanted to have something that could elevate me to match Bridget's excellence. It's gonna be a Jaguar kind of day. What are you drinking, Bridget?
Oh, wow. That is an introduction. Thank you so much, Maria. I'm also drinking coffee out of my Bridget mug, which I love very much. It's supporting me with lots of energy. I'm drinking today a Nespresso. It's flavored caramel. I like that very much once in a while to also have a flavored coffee. And today I thought I want to do so. And I'm a coffee lover. I like to drink coffee all around the world. And I very much love real espresso done with a portafilter coffee machine, like the Italian, like traditional, exclusive, in the traditional, exclusive way. And then I know it sounds very, very crazy, but I love instant coffee. And that has a history. There is a story behind, because when I was a flight attendant in my very early days, it was not so common to drink coffee everywhere, and there was no Starbucks around the corner in Southeast Asia, or in the Caribbean, or wherever you go. There was not really coffee that you could drink. So I always brought instant coffee with me, because living out of a suitcase in a hotel, staying at a hotel like 20 days a month, I needed coffee. So instant coffee goes with me everywhere. It's always with me, because you never know. So that's really why I like instant coffee.
That is so interesting. So thanks for sharing. And I love the mug. Thanks.
Yeah.
So just to share with the audience, you and I are friends, and we are in an accountability pod together. So I meet with Bridget on a weekly basis. I've been doing that. We've been doing that for about a year, along with Mindy Rosser. So in that accountability pod, I not only do I get the pleasure of interacting with Bridget and hearing all about her business growth, but the focus mostly is on our businesses. We have a little bit of personal time. So, of course, we get to know each other in a personal way. But I am thrilled to have you on this show so we can go a whole bit deeper. So thank you so much for being on the show, Bridget. Before we get into talking deeper about why personal brands will change your life, tell us a little bit about your early signs of genius.
Okay, I'm very happy to do so, because I think we never talked about this before. And we get to know each other even better, right? So my early times of genius, I have to go back really, really early. So when I was about 5 years old. And most of the time of my childhood, I spent at my grandmother's farm, where my mother comes from. It's somewhere, it's really in the middle of the mountain, in the heart of Austria. And yeah, so I spent most of the time there. And we also had a huge pond with fish in it in the middle of our land. And to get there, one had to pass by our farmhouse, and the village priest was granted access and was allowed to fish there. So, and since I was very small, what I can remember, I was totally into moving around furniture and building tent houses in front of our house during summertime. And I really was, it was fulfilling me. And I mean, a lot of kids build tent houses, right? And um, I knew the times when the priest was usually coming to fish. And so I prepared coffee and cake and sweets. So respectively, my grandmother did, because she was instructed by me, yeah, the priest is coming and he has to pass by. I need to earn some money. Yeah. So when he came, I offered him some coffee, and I literally had coffee time with the priest. Like I have coffee time with you right now. So I had coffee time with the priest and offered him some cake as well. And for him, it was like going through customs. He was allowed to pass by to get to the pond. So I asked for money because I was owning this thing. So this was the first
That is
time.
definitely an early sign of genius. I've never heard that story like you say. And oh my goodness, entrepreneur at 5 years old.
Yeah. And I loved to make him feel comfortable, to service him, to exceed his expectations of such a, what does a small little young girl can offer? But I offered him coffee and cake and the conversation. And so I really felt really good being of service. And I continued that 15 years later as a flight attendant. But before we come to that, there's another story. And I was like around 8, 9, 10 years, something like that. And we also had a servant working in the stables, and he was the handyman for everything. He was living with us, and when he was an orphan, he came across the mountains to find work at our farm when he was a child. And my great-grandmother took him in. And I always was feeling with him because he never learned how to read and how to write. He never went to school. That was like in these days, in the last century, right? So my goal was to teach him to read and write. And my family watched me teach him. And they said, one day you will make a dedicated teacher. So I started around 20 years later, I started and got a master in business education. So this is kind of two things where I figured in my early childhood, and it's always about what did you do between kind of the age of 6 and 8, something around that. So I was totally into design and making things beautiful and optimizing things and shifting things around so they are beautiful, and change that over time, because you also change over time. So it was always about that and about educating others. Whatever I knew, I had to pass on right away. And also helping other people to feel comfortable. Yeah, to feel comfortable when they come to me being a host. I just love that. Yeah, so that's what is in my genius. And yeah, so it's basically me, my humanity, my kindness, and then also more the hard ingredients. It's all the learnings, my degrees that I have in international marketing and management and business education.
Tell us a little bit about that. So 5 years old, that's an amazing story. I never knew that. Love the stories. But when you're getting into high school, kind of getting to that graduate high school, what happens at that point in your time, in your life?
So actually, I always wanted to study architecture because of design. But then when I was in my early teens, all my girlfriends and friends went to business school. So there were a lot of factors that came into, and then I decided to do business school. And also my parents told me, yeah, you're better off with a business school than being an architect. And so I just dismissed that somehow. Yeah, I'm integrating it again now with designing. But I went to business school, but I knew this is not it for the rest of my life. And I was like, I wanted to see the world, and I was raised in a very protected and predominantly playing small environment. So I needed to get out of there. I needed to make my own experiences. And so I decided to break free. and and I always wanted to become a flight attendant, because when I was 14, the first time I was flying as a passenger somewhere, I think to Tenerife, and I was like, oh my God, these beautiful flight attendants, and they see the world. I want to be one of them. So
sounds like fun, right?
Sounds like fun. So I said, okay, when I'm done with business school, I become a flight attendant. And so I did. And,
okay. So you don't even, you get business school done. You could have a business job, but you decide to go into flight attendant. Now, when you become a flight attendant, is that pretty much like they train you and you start that job right away?
Yeah. So I don't know whether you know him. My boss was Niki. He was a celebrity. He still is. He already died 2 years ago. But he is the famous former Formula One car race driver. And he was the owner of Lauda Air, the airline I worked for. And there's actually a movie on him on Netflix. It's called Rush. So watch it if you haven't done yet, because it tells a lot about his personality. And he was really the one. Everything had to be perfect. And he expected us to serve 100, 110, 150%. So this was the minimum. So we were really trained to provide the best possible service.
How did you get this opportunity? Like, I knew this little tidbit, but help us understand, like, what happened? So you decide, you take a flight, you see these flight attendants, you want to become a flight attendant, and you go to work for Niki Lauda?
Yeah. So I applied for the job, and as natural as I am, authentic, I said, hello. So we had to go through an assessment center kind of, and we had to play a flight attendant, and they asked us different kinds of questions, and certain situation kind of really tested us. So I passed that. And I think a couple of weeks later, I was already sitting in the course. And it was supposed to be 4 weeks long to get all the training, the service training, the technical training, the flight safety training, everything. But after 3 weeks, they said, you guys, you do not need the other week. The whole night, you're going to do the flight safety training and pass that. And tomorrow, you have your first flight to the Caribbean. So I didn't even expect that. So within 24 hours, the whole night I was learning flight safety and passing the test. In the morning, driving back to the airport with a packed suitcase on my first flight to the Caribbean. I think I stayed there for 1 week. Yeah.
Wow.
So I had my first emergency there.
Oh, really? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go.
So it was, I was like, sitting in the back, when you're junior flight attendant, you're usually working in economy class, and I had the entry door in the back, the exit door, and the plane, took off, and I was like, oh my God, now I'm responsible for this door. So what do I do in an emergency? And I was really excited about that. And yeah, so everything went well. But we also had to transfer from one airport to another one. So we flew to the Dominican Republic. And there we arrived in, I think, Puerto Plata. And 1 week later, we had to take over another flight from Santo Domingo back to Austria. And the transfer flight, where we were as a crew, we call that deadheading, where you are basically a passenger, but you're still an airline member. Yeah, so we went with a very small plane, and then after the plane took off, the airport said your forward wheel is not coming in, so something is wrong with the plane. So we had to do an emergency landing again, and we didn't know if the wheel is going to sustain the touchdown. So yeah, so that was my first flight. Everything went well, and then I think we went with the bus. I can't remember anymore. That's 30 years ago. It was exciting.
So a couple questions there. Did you know, and were you specifically targeting that airline to work for? Were there other options?
Yeah. There were other options, and I also passed that test with Austrian Airlines. That was the state-owned airline at that time. But I wanted to fly for Niki Lauda. First, he was a celebrity. So wherever we went, was it Sydney? Was it Bangkok? Was it Mombasa in Kenya? Was it the Caribbean islands? Everyone knew Niki Lauda. And when we came in our red outfits, everyone, she's flying for Lauda Air. It was like it was like everyone was excited when we were coming. So everyone knew us basically. And he also sold his red hat. He was known for his red hat. So it was part of our merchandise we had. So everyone was wearing red hats in Jamaica. So it was really fun. And
okay, so I can see how that little 5-year-old girl that wanted to, be entrepreneurial and, be in service, I can see then how that totally lined you up to be in that environment and to succeed in that environment. So that's interesting. Did you know that you were going to that you would have all those? You have to be a lot of different things to be successful, I would imagine, for that airline.
Absolutely. You need to know how to serve, and you need to know, you need to be humble, and you need to really have the feeling for passengers, and from the beginning. But after a while, you know exactly when this person is boarding the plane and you say good afternoon or good evening, you know what they want to read. You feel like you're anticipating the answer. It's going to be a brandy. I think he likes red wine. Let's see. Yeah. So it's kind of, you feel it already. You know exactly what kind of newspaper they are reading. Yeah. So you get kind of, you can read people when they step into a plane and when you start a conversation.
You mean you can read people?
Yeah, you start. I think every one of us, it's part of being a servant, and it's part of exceeding expectations of people. So when someone enters at that time a plane, a Lauda aircraft, they knew what they're expecting. It's the highest service ever that you can offer. Yeah. So we had like in business class 8-course menus. Yeah, we had from hors d'oeuvres to salads and soups and fish course, and then an in-between course with champagne, and then we had the meat course, and then we had dessert on the trolley, and we had cheese on the trolley, and dessert wine on the trolley, and everything, every meal went with the right drink. So we were really very well trained, I would say. Yeah.
So at the time, did you have any inkling of your personal brand or of your branding genius at that time? Or were you just kind of operating pretty natural, and that you could pick up on those things, you recognize those things?
Awesome. I was very young. I was 20 years old, and there was not this awareness yet of what we have right now when it comes to personal branding, when how important brands are, and what they do, what they stand for, and why we should brand. I knew Niki Lauda had that. And I don't know whether it was intentionally or it's just him to excel and be the best, and fight competition, state-owned competition as a private airline. Yeah, we made it. We did it. Yeah. And so for me, it was also a natural thing. I just was who I am. And
well, that's what I'm saying, because what they say is that like energies attract.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But still, yeah, and I knew I always want to serve people, always, because the sparkle in my passengers' eyes when they disembark, they say, "Thank you for the nice service. See you next time." And some really I had like many times from like Munich to Miami. I always had the same passengers, It was fun after a while you kind of have almost a relationship on a business level. You know exactly what they're drinking and that they want to sleep now for the next 2 hours. Yeah. And I should wake them up for an in-between snack or so. Yeah. So I think to provide the best possible service, you have to be really authentic. You have to be true to yourself and just do whatever you feel like in a very genuine way, in a very in moral and in ethical boundaries. But if you're raised like a decent human being, you know what is accepted and what is not accepted, in our society. But there is another layer that comes to that, is when you're working internationally, globally, because different countries have different cultural backgrounds, attitudes, and behaviors towards something, and different sets of norms. Yeah. So and that needs to be understood and integrated. And how you also work, it's like if you have a diverse workforce. Yeah, we started out very early. We flew with Thai flight attendant, but their behavior, their way of thinking, their thought patterns, and what a yes means to them is a different meaning what it means to us. So you really need to be clear about that. And honestly, we were not trained. We were running into difficulties and in ahas, in the middle of the air. Why is she not doing her job? Because a yes means something completely different for her. Then I told her, okay, you're flight attendant number 4, and you know what to do. What's your procedure when you get on board? Oh, yes, ma'am. Okay, so I took for granted that she knew what she was doing. But the yes was not, I have understood. It's just, I have heard you. I have heard you. So when you work across different cultures with different backgrounds, you need to get confirmation of what this person has really understood when she heard you. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So this is beautiful. So, because so many things in every part of your whole world all along are lining you up, informing you in many ways to lead you toward certain transformations and a trajectory for your life. My one, I'll call it a cheap thrill question, is, did you meet Niki?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, I flew with him a lot. I also, when we came up with a new service, let's say a new invention, I was with him on his private jet going to Madrid to do a presentation. I was flying with him to the Caribbean. I was flying with him on short haul flights also through Austria. We had party evenings together. It was a lot of fun with him, but we also worked very, very hard. Very, very, very hard.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah. So you're talking about new products or services. So were you instrumental in helping that creation?
I was not part of the creation, but part of the implementation process, promoting it, and then also giving feedback how it works. Because, for example, a flight from, let's say, Salzburg to Frankfurt is 30 minutes. 30 minutes, and we did a full service. We did full service with, handing out cutlery, with handing out, let's say, the trays for the breakfast, then coming in with the bread, then coming in with the coffee. And it was small planes, but still, I mean, there were 2 flight attendants on board. And if you had a junior or a trainee, then you basically do everything yourself, and you just try to keep going, pushing that you can make it through. And there was a person in the last row and said, "Oh, I think I'm gonna eat later." I said, "Yes, you're very welcome to eat at Frankfurt Airport." So I mean, I could not hand over the tray because we were about to make our descent again, in 10 minutes. So we actually were getting off our jump seat when the plane took off. And while we took off, we prepared everything in the kitchen. And the kitchen was like this. So it was really hard. And now, what do you get on a 30 minutes flight? Honestly, it's not necessary. But
you don't even get water on.
You don't even get water. And you get nothing. I think when I fly domestic in the US, I think under a 4-hour flight, you maybe get something to drink.
Maybe
if you have,
and it's limited.
It's limited. You cannot drink everything. So everything was for free on board, basically. So that was a different way of working. And also at the time management, organizing yourself. I mean, we had procedures, but sometimes you have to pivot. You have to change the service if there is a special event or an irregularity that comes up. So you have to be very flexible. And that's what I've learned too. So I've learned so much at this time for my time now, organizing myself, being efficient, how to serve people, to read people, to feel into the pain points, to really get an understanding. What is the pain point? What is this is the desire? How do I get this person from here to there where they want to be? And achieve their goals. So how can I be the best guide possible to lead my hero or the heroine there? Right?
Yeah. Okay. But some of that is formulating on that job. Help us understand what happens as you transform and you make a change in your career.
Yeah. So, I mean, I knew flying for me, I mean, I loved it, but there was an end date. And that is the number 36. And when we turned 36, the contract automatically ended. He wanted young flight attendants and not old flight attendants.
36 was the
age.
age.
In the 90s. I mean, you can't do that anymore nowadays because of, the regulations. And so I knew, okay, with 36, I'm basically done with my life, have to find something else. And I knew that it's so hard to start something new with 36. And I always wanted to study. Never, ever someone in my family studied. My mom coming from the farm, my dad from just a normal family in the city. So never, ever someone had a degree. And I was like, actually, I would love that. And there was no option flying, study and fly. There are the programs right now. I think many airlines have that. And we didn't have that because Niki Lauda wanted us to fly as human beings and 72 block hours a month. And there was no time for family. And, when you go to Bangkok like 2 times a week, or you're gone for 2 weeks, and then maybe there's an irregularity. You think in Singapore you go back to Vienna, and then actually you go back to Sydney again. So you never know where you are and where you are in 2 weeks' time. So at that time, it was not like a fixed schedule. Sometimes I came home, I didn't even know what I will do in 2 or 3 days. I was waiting for a call, and we did not have smartphones. I got a call.
Oh, right.
My landline.
Oh.
Half an hour, you have to go to Jamaica. But you have to come in 40 minutes because the flight is going via my Benza. So I was like, oh my God.
Wow. That's a lifestyle.
It's a lifestyle. And I loved it, but I also knew there needs to be something else because I was not intellectually challenged after a while. I mean, after a while, everything becomes a routine. You do this and that, you do your announcements, and then everything is just like normal. And I'm not a person who goes with normal for the rest until
No, not at all.
another 50, 60 years. And I mean, but there are people, sometimes I admire those people who are happy with what they have because it's so much easier, this life.
Yes.
But I'm so driven and I'm motivated. I'm inspired by little things, and then I'm inspired by innovations. I need to have that. I want to do that. I want to optimize my life. I want to level up. I just want to do that. So I thought, I would love to study, and then, yeah, I like to, all the trainee flight attendants I had on my flights, I like to help them understand and train them on the go, learning by doing. So I liked that a lot. I was like, actually, when I was a child, I already loved to teach others. And then I remembered my uncle, or the servant. He was an uncle for me, actually, from my childhood time. I was like, okay, maybe I become an educator, because I was always like playing safe too. What if I don't get a job somewhere? I still can be a teacher, because a teacher is always needed, right? So then I started international marketing and management, because I'm a global person. I will always be. And also did my
So that's interesting. I mean, you say that, so it was obvious by that time you kind of knew who you were, wanted to get into education and be an educator, and it was like, this is basically the option. It was very clear.
Yeah, it was not, being an educator was not first thought and was not priority. It was a fallback option, because if I'm also a certified teacher, for me it's easier to teach somewhere in a business school or something, which I never wanted, and I still don't want to, because I want to work with grown-ups, with adults who come to school because they really want to be there, instead of actually taking over the job of parents. So yeah, but it was not first priority. First priority was doing my degree and going back to the airline, and getting a job in the corporate, in the organization, in marketing or in business development or something like that. But, and the big but comes, when I was done with my studies, the airline industry maneuvered through strong turbulences of mergers and acquisitions. So they rather fire than hire anyone. So I was devastated. I couldn't go back, because for me, it kept me going. It was like surviving 5 years of not going out, of saving money, of living from what I have, of drinking water, of not going shopping. It was like really sacrificing a lot just to get this degree. I mean, I was very quick. I started within, I think it was a 9 semester, and I did it in 8. So I was really fast and very motivated, intrinsically motivated, really wanted it. And I wanted to go back to where I come from, because once you are infected with airline virus, you will never get rid of it.
Is that right?
Yes. So, and I still have a lot of friends there, and it's always fun when I go on a flight and there is someone from the past, who is still flying. It's most probably either a purser, a chief flight attendant, or a pilot, usually the captain, who is that old.
Yeah,
who I still know, and then it's like, oh, can you remember? So it is always a big hello. It's fun. Yeah.
Nice.
So
okay, so times change, and the world kind of basically closes one door but opens another. What does that look like?
Yeah, so then I worked for different companies, for the Aldi Group as a branch manager and an area manager. So it was really great to see how retail works. Aldi is the owner of Trader Joe's. Right. It's really interesting, Aldi North. And then I worked for another company. And then there was an opening at the department where I studied as a student for a PhD program. I applied. There was around 100 applicants and I got it. So I did my PhD where I actually was a student. It was fun. I had a great time. Writing my thesis and teaching. So I taught at the university here, the business school in Vienna, and also in other parts of the world. So we were like traveling and teaching here a course and there a course. So I taught in Russia, in the Ukraine, I taught in the United States, I taught in Canada, in Hong Kong. So really it is in Vietnam. So it was really nice to have this experience and teach at different parts of the world.
Wow.
And I have studied at different universities around the world, and also seeing that from an academic perspective and first from a flight attendant's perspective. Because when you're a flight attendant, you're also spending like a week in Bangkok, a week in Australia, on an island in the Caribbean, on Sri Lanka, in the United States. So you get an all-round kind of perspective of culture and different society levels. So that was really also interesting for me.
Yeah, that is interesting. So it seems like when you look at your entire career starting at 5 years old, everything is like perfectly lining up just for Bridget.
Oh yes. So, but there's a lot of, detours as well and closed doors. So when I couldn't back to the airline, I was dying. It was like my heart is there and I can't go back. It was one of the worst experiences in my life. But then you have to cope with it. You have to pivot. You have to find another way because everything happens for a reason. So,
Yes.
and also here was a reason. Yeah.
Right.
And then I did my PhD. I taught for one school year at the University of Missouri in St. Louis. They actually wanted to keep me there. But I had a relationship back in Europe, so I wanted to go back. But then the relationship dissolved once I was back. So I was like, oh my God, why did I come back? But also that
well, everything happens for a reason. That's so interesting. And some of these things they take us where they take us or don't take us where they don't take us.
Yeah. And you know what? And then I think the worst part of my life only started because I did a lot of other detours. And it's like, a bear seeing a pot of honey and tasting, and then they take it away from you again.
Yeah.
So then I worked after my PhD for an international real estate company. It did a lot of developments in Eastern Europe. And then 2008 came. I was 6 months with this company, and the company went bankrupt from one day to the next.
So 2008 was a year.
Yeah. So I was about to set up the market research department I was heading. And it didn't work out at the end of the day because the company went bankrupt before we even started to thrive. And then the university asked me if I want to take on more teaching assignments, and I was already teaching several courses. So for me, that was a transition into becoming professor. So when you think like I was a flight attendant, then I was a student, and went back to work for a corporation, then back to become a student. And as a sideline, I always continued teaching when I went back to the corporates, to the corporate world. And then I took on a temporary contract with the Vienna University of Economics and Business and taught for the last, let's say, almost 10, 12 years. And as a sideline at other universities as well, because the pay at universities are less than minimum. Yeah, so you have to make a living somehow. And for me, this was also a sign of not appreciation, because you really work your butt off. And there's nothing coming back in financial terms, and you want to make a living. And if I compare that, I had more as a flight attendant 30 years ago than I had as a professor at the university. And I thought, I cannot let this happen. And this was for me also making me very small. I'm not worth it. You're just a teaching professor that is anyway considered a second class. Yeah. At the university, if you're not primarily doing research. I'm very honest right now.
Well, no, but this is so important because, I'm so curious. I know we're kind of getting there as to how BridgetBrands started. So, and I appreciate what you're saying right now, because certainly for my audience, women in STEM, women in male-dominated industries, there's a lot of times where you get to this point where you're totally understanding that your value and your worth and your compensation for it may not be matched. And it doesn't make you feel good. So tell us what happens then. So that must have been percolating for you. What did you do with it?
Yeah, so I knew there was this end date. Again, I had a contract that was terminating, and I was not old enough. I was not in the mid 50s that they could take me over permanently. Because when you are almost like towards your retiring years, then they say, okay, let's take her. But they didn't. I was not old enough, not yet.
This time you were too young. The other time it was you were too old.
Okay. Yeah, but thank God, everything has a reason why it happens. And I knew this was coming. And I started on a sideline to do workshops for corporations. So it's about leading in alignment with corporate values. At that time, I knew already I want to go into, let's say, personal branding, employee branding, getting the best out of the people, and really make sure that whatever you do is in alignment with the values, both value systems that each individual has with the organizational values. So that was very successful.
Well, this is interesting, because this is where we're finally at the story where, looking back on your whole life, it's like all of these things have been informing you, educating you. You were part of this branding process, and now you're teaching it.
Yeah, exactly. And then in March 2020, my contract terminated. So it terminated in February. And in March 2020, I thought I can really start out with my workshops and go into all these different companies. And then there was not going into all these different companies because we were in a lockdown. And yeah, COVID basically totally made my business model irrelevant, because I couldn't do what I was thinking I would do as a business owner. So I had to pivot again. And I was like, how can I do that now? We are in a lockdown. And then I still continued teaching at the university because they needed to teach some courses. So there was Bridget, let's call Bridget to do it. So I did it because I needed money anyway, because I had no safety net anymore. I didn't know how to survive. There was no one who pays my bills. There was only me. And of course, I'm also a planner, and I'm very intentional with how I spend my money. So this was a welcoming situation. And then I thought, so how do I get my word out? And I was starting to become busier on LinkedIn. It was, I don't know whether you know, but LinkedIn was started out actually in the academic realm, in the academic world. A lot of professors started on LinkedIn, networking and connecting. So I was also part of them. And then you don't really need it that much though, because there were also other ways of how to get in touch. But LinkedIn became more so the social media platform for businesses. And I was like, okay, so I have already a lot of connections. And then I followed a woman. She did a podcast, a woman in Canada, and her name is Catherine Bussman. And I listened to her podcast, and it was about the global market. And I was like, oh my God, I could do a podcast. So what is this exactly? So I did all my research. And then I was like fascinated with this technology. And I was like, oh my God, so I need a microphone. I need this. I need that. How can I was totally overwhelmed. And then within 2 months, I did it.
But so you must obviously you loved it. You just jumped right in.
Because there was nothing else to do than continue teaching the courses on Zoom which was a challenge actually, because nobody really knew how to do Zoom at that time. It was nothing so familiar, not in Austria in 2020. So I really had to get comfortable with that. And so that was one thing, but I was not there yet to do that as a business. I had already some contracts with the universities, with the university here in Vienna, with the business school. It's the Executive Academy, and they asked me if I can create online courses. So I started doing that, and I really loved it. I liked to do my recording and do the slides and everything. So I figured this is a route to go. This is an avenue I can pursue as a business owner.
Awesome.
And then I saw, and 1 year later, and this somehow, it takes some time to really, to manifest and find your way. And I continued teaching also in the fall semester. And then I was checking Facebook, which I do not do very often. I'm not so much a Facebook girl. But suddenly I saw an ad by Amy Porterfield. Yeah. And then you know where the story goes, right? So I thought, okay, that's it. You're doing an online course about how to, for me, it was more promoting an online course, because I know how to set up courses. I know how to teach courses because I'm an educator, a certified, I studied it, but I had no clue of how to promote it on social media. That's a different story. Yeah. So for me, is what is going on right now in this world? I'm not doing research about the past, and what it means for the future. I need it now, and I need to know what is trendy right now and what are the things, the tools that work to get me connected with my ideal client.
Awesome. So and perfect. Bridget, I'm finding that you just are not only a wealth of information, but you have so many fascinating stories. I could talk to you forever. And I just want to be a little mindful on time, because I do want to set us up to talk a bit about the future of women's leadership. So just hearing your story and hearing all of these things, you clearly can turn something out of nothing. Like, it's amazing the transformations that you've gone through. I'm sure we haven't really even understood some of those challenges, because you talk about it, and just to hear the stories, we understand that there must have been so much other things, just humanly and emotional things that go along with those transformations, and you make it look like a breeze. You certainly are incredibly excellent. So help us just understand with all of that. And like you said, where are we going in the future? And certainly what, as far as your global branding expertise, I love to hear you talk about global branding, because it definitely, you shine. It's like there's something so brilliant that comes out of you when you're in that zone talking about branding. So just two things: the future of women's leadership, and how does personal branding really change our lives?
Okay, so I start with how personal branding changes our lives, because that goes into also the women in the future and leadership, and it always starts with ourselves. It starts with women ourselves, and because when we look at us as a personal brand and what that means, and just reflecting and do this introspection, yeah, then you change your life. So it always starts with us. Yeah? It's lead your ship. I love this word. Lead your ship, your own ship first, before you can lead anyone else. Yeah.
Yes.
So for me, it means being self-compassionate and having empathy for yourself. Yeah? It's about self-love and finding the answers within us. So leading from within, sourcing all your authority also from within, instead of trying to get it from the outside world, because we have the wisdom in us. Yeah. So you need to know really well who you are. So living by your core values, that's what I always did. Yeah. And that is when you shine, when you are in your sweet spot. It's when you are very naturally doing your things and changing other people's lives. And then other people tell you, oh my God, this was great. Thank you so much. And you are not even aware what you did. That's why it's so important that you really reflect. And that you also, not only that, but get the outside perspective. How do I get across, and how do I change the world from others' perspective? Because a strong personal brand is always a reflection from what people perceive in the market from you. Yeah. So first of all, awareness, self-awareness of who you are, then accepting that, yes, that's me, that's who I am, how I am, and then taking action from that point. Yeah. And I think it's also the time for the world to recognize and acknowledge the benefits that we as women in leadership bring to the world. Yeah. And we are changing the world to a better place. Definitely. Yeah.
What makes you
And
say that?
excuse me? What makes me say that?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I think it's really important. Help us understand what makes you say that.
Yeah, there are a lot of reasons. Because women, I would really, and there's also an Harvard article about it. It's that when women leaders leave, the losses multiply. That's what the name of the article is called. And research confirms here with two crucial leadership qualities of women: it's wisdom and compassion. And women leaders rank substantially higher than their male counterparts. And this translates to business and financial results, because when you lead differently, also the performance goes up. And
Wow.
Yeah. So organizations really should get going to promote these principles and these practices that promote gender equity, develop compassionate leadership, and increase learning through this intentional peer coaching, mentoring, advisory circles for men and women. Yeah, because we need to get along with each other. It's not about just women ruling the world, but really getting a balance, and also this appreciation of us as women leaders in this world. And there are still only 7% in the executive positions when it comes to women. Now, there is a little upswing right now from last year, because it went down again in percentage, but there are more women now also in management positions and in the C-suite, but not that many really in the executive seats. So that's what we really have to push. And I have here also I found a really interesting article. It was about women in leadership. And I found that because I also think that we have to have women as personal brands, right? So it's women that we look up to. We have our own personal heroines, right? We have our role models whom we admire, we look up, and we emulate. Yeah, we want to be like her. And for me, it's, for example, Oprah. Yeah, she's the perfect role model. She inspires me, and she inspires many other women in every walk of life. And for me, it's also Coco Chanel. Yeah, and there are others such as Jane Fraser from Citigroup, Carol Tomei from UPS. She was the former Home Depot CEO. And then there's also the Queen of Pop herself, PepsiCo's former CEO, Indra Nooyi. And she has a few hot tips for becoming successful women leaders. And I might state some of them, okay? So
Please.
for most of all, find a mentor, a woman as a mentor, because mentorship will play a larger role in career development for women, because it's about the women supporting women. Yeah, when it comes from a woman, it's different because she really goes through it. It's your journey, your personal journey. And that's what's about personal branding. Personal branding is really looking at the detours, at the challenges of the people before us went through. Yeah, those that we emulate, those that we admire. And then also always become ultra prepared for anything you do. Yeah, scripted or whatever. Go bowling and do a golf course or whatever, just to be there. I know it's harder for us because we have to go the extra mile. We have to work much harder, but that's how it is right now.
Yeah, that's how it is right now. And it's so worth it. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Coming.
Then bring your whole self to work. So we can't leave our personal life outside the door when we walk into work, right? It's not possible. It's important that leaders become compassionate. This is one of the most important values, right? And accept that employees have lives outside of your work. It's clear performance is always first, but in order to run a company. But I think at the same time, it's always good to get the best people and the best out of people. And a person cannot detach him or herself from private life. That's impossible. Yeah, we do our best. I also did my best when I was about crying because my boyfriend left me and I had a flight. I cannot stay in front. Hello, welcome today. I have to, have attitude and play my role. I have to do that. I can cry later on. Yeah. So yeah, and also workplaces become more relational. Yeah. So we move from this transactional more into the relational, and because if there is a lack of relational, people start quitting their jobs. I know that the paycheck is important and the amount of money you work is also important because it's a sign of appreciation, right? But you want to feel that you are valued by the organization, by your managers, and you need this sense of belonging to some organization. The feeling of belonging, that's really important. And also as a leader, thank your employees for what they are doing. Yeah, that goes back to being relational, compassionate, and showing that you're worth it, and make it personal. And here it ties in again, every part of transformation should be framed in a story. So it's about storytelling, and authority through authenticity is the key, because authority incorporates you being the author of your story. So you tell your story, and then you are again relatable. I think that this makes the thing whole, and that's so important. And that is exactly what women bring in, and of course from performance to purpose, because there always is a purpose, a higher purpose than just bottom line making profit. Yeah. There is a purpose. We want to leave a legacy, and that's about personal branding. We want to set the footprint. We want to be. We want to change the world or make a difference. And if it's one single person, yeah, you have made a difference in other people's lives.
Oh my gosh, this has been so huge. And no surprise, I know you are so amazingly excellent. So I love the ending there was beautiful because I think all of your tips completely align to help us understand why there are so many losses when people lose women leaders. I can't thank you enough for your excellence and for such an enriching interview. Really, I could have some more. We'll have to have you back on the show to talk a lot more about brands. I think we just scratched the surface.
Yeah.
Your success story is, and your travels and everything about your life is so fascinating. You definitely inspire women's leadership. Help us in closing. Do you have an inspirational quote for the audience?
Yes, of course, by Oprah Winfrey. And I quote, "Let excellence be your brand. When you are excellent, you become unforgettable. Doing the right thing, even when nobody knows you're doing the right thing, will always bring the right thing to you."
Wow, perfect quote for an amazing conversation to talk about women's leadership. Bridget, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a blast. I talked a lot, I know. But when you ask me these questions, I just can't stop it anymore. You have to stop me.
That's
And
okay.
Yeah, and I hope I can, help people with what I've said to become more actionable and just step into your self-worth and own it. There's nothing that can happen. What's the worst that can happen? Just think about that, and then you just walk it.
Right. Thank you so much. Like I said, this has been really, really amazing. Help us understand how people can get in contact with you.
Yeah, okay. I'm very busy on LinkedIn under my name, and I think you put it into the show notes. And on LinkedIn, everybody knows anyway, and they can follow me there. I also have my own website. It's BridgetBrands.com, and you find everything there. I also have a brand building free downloadable checklist and guide. So if you want to have that, then visit my website. I click on it. You will also see what services I offer for companies, workshops on personal branding in the context of organizations, and workshops or one-on-one exclusive coaching when it comes to building your personal brand. And then I also will launch an online course. It's about branding from employee to entrepreneurship. So for everyone who is done being an employee and who wants to start his or her own business, then this is the course for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being a part of the conversation for inspiring women's leadership. Coffee Time with Kauffman is the comfortable place to discuss women's leadership because I am on a mission to help the world discover the truth about what women are capable of. When you are ready for your leadership mastery makeover, go to mariakaufman.com and click on Consult a Coach, where you can schedule time with me for an empowerment session. Have a great week. Enjoy your adventures and journey responsibly. Thank you so much, Bridget.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you so much.